Good morning and welcome to the Roy Branson Legacy Sabbath School. This morning we get to hear from Dr. Laura Alipoon as we're beginning our move through the book Facing Doubt by Reinder Bruinsma. And I'm going to ask Dr. Alipoon to come here just for a moment so I can ask a question or two. What are all of your titles? Let's begin with you have several.
I'm chair of the Department of Radiation Technology in the School of Allied Health Professions, and I'm also the Associate Director for the Office of Educational Effectiveness over Accreditation and Assessment. Or Assessment and Accreditation.
So in that position, what do you do?
I've been wandering around to the different schools making sure that the assessment process is occurring, primarily for ourselves, but also for our accrediting agency, WASC.
Anybody here involved in assessment? We in the School of Religion are, and it's a challenge for us because we're not accustomed to doing that sort of thing. But you sent me something that you thought would be helpful for us in assessment. Can you tell the group what that is?
I don't remember. What did I say?
There was a nephew, I think.
Oh, yes. My nephew, Dominic Litzy, is the director of the chaplaincy department there at, it's not called Castle Memorial anymore, it's
Oh, is that right?
Adventist Health at Castle, or
okay.
whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And after the recent suicides of Anthony Bourdain in particular, they had him on the news, their health news on the island, and asking him about suicide and suicide prevention and that type of thing. So I thought it was really good for them to have that clip to show that one of their alum has gone on to be recognized and actually on the news.
Good. We need all the help we can get. Thank you very much. Let's begin with prayer. Dear God, again, we're thankful for the Sabbath School and for those who come. We're thankful for the many ways Dr. Alipoon serves our institution, and we're thankful for all the work she's done to prepare this discussion. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Let's start with me telling those of you who have just come in that I'm using Poll Everywhere today. So if you have your phone, there's a couple of methods. I'm also going to be using it next week. So if you want to go to your app store and just put in Poll Everywhere, it's free, and download it. Once you get there, if you go that method, it will have pollev.com backslash, yeah, it's warm. And you can put my name in, Laura Alipoon 975. When it says to you to add a screen name, skip that part unless you want to see your name by every one of your polls. And you'll be ready to go when we get there. The other way, and this part isn't true, if you want to use your data, you can go out to the internet and do that. Another way is just when we're ready, send a text to this number, and the content of the text is my name and 975. In that case, you won't see the questions. You'll just have to add ABC and send that off to me each time. So it's totally up to you which direction you want to do it. And I will have this screen again right before we get to the poll. I have 3 near-ish the beginning and another 3 or 4 a little later on. So today we're going to be starting this book. I'm doing a little bit out of the preface and chapters 1 and 2. And those of you who have been attending Sabbath School for a while will have met the author. Am I saying his first name right? Reinder? Reinder? I'm always wanting to say reindeer, and I know that's wrong.
So do I. I like reindeer. I think is it Reinder?
Reinder Bruinsma. Okay. I met he and his wife. Very, very nice people. I'm putting some resources here in the front. They're also on your handout, and they're also at the end. I'm primarily taking things out of this book. I'm not sure I actually put anything in by Philip Jenkins, but it's there. And the Unity Conference is actually going to be next week as we get to chapter 3. I have some things out of this article, though. As long as the shepherd is the same, it does not matter that the sheep are not clones. Some of you will agree with the book. I have not finished it. I've read through chapter 3, And I haven't even read in detail chapter 3 because after all that's mine next week and I had to get this week done. What I would ask though is that we have an open dialogue. We're Christians, we love each other even if we don't like each other, so open dialogue is welcome even if we disagree. I'll be summarizing his words, and he states, this book has been written by a Seventh-day Adventist for Seventh-day Adventist Christians. So his target audience is Adventists on the margin. I've already covered some of this, but basically, there's a page number somewhere on there. I've tried to be real good about quotes when I'm quoting. If you find an error, I apologize, but the page number is there. I have paraphrased him. When it's actually my words, I'll tell you. Meaning, if it's my thought, my words, it'll say so. All right, now that we've gotten all those things out of the way. He's from the Netherlands, and Zeewold, to be specific, and I thought I'd put a map up there. Unless you've traveled, you may not know where a lot of these places are. I've not been to the Netherlands. I would like to, it's on my list, but I have been other places, and that's how I remember is when I have been somewhere. So he's not trying to give up on his church. He has not left the church. He doesn't want to discourage anyone. That, he said, and can you hear me okay? All right. That, he said, was the last thing he ever wanted to do, was to cause anyone to question their faith or to leave the church. He's hoping that it will cause some to reconnect with the church. So I want to make that very, very clear. We have people sometimes, I assume devoted Seventh-day Adventist Christians, who have listened to some of our talks, and I've quit reading them, but I read one and they quoted, so-and-so in our classroom said this. And I had to respond because I said, actually, he said the exact opposite. So-and-so, please go back and rewatch the video. Because then there were people who, oh, and off and running. And I apologize if I'm mocking, I don't mean to. Off and running without ever having seen the video. So I want to make it very, very, very clear. His purpose is to help people, Seventh-day Adventists who are on the margin. He's not trying to drive anyone out. Staying or leaving. Here are some of the people who have come to him because they know he won't judge and that he will try to assist. They have concerns about the trends in the SDA church currently. They have doubts about the faith that they have held to be theirs since a child. They have doubts about certain Adventist beliefs now that they're an adult and have read more for themselves. And they're beginning to feel that the Adventist church is becoming irrelevant. These are some of the concerns that the book looks at. All right, we're going to come up on a poll. For those of you who have not managed to get your phone or your tablet working, here it is again. You can download the app. And if you download the app, it'll have this already. So then you add Laura Alipoon 975. Or if you just want to text, you don't want to download the app, or maybe you already have it, you can send the text to this number, and the content of the text is my name and 975. You ready, or should I wait a moment?
Wait a moment.
Okay. Gail, I'm shocked you don't have the app on your phone.
I do.
Oh, you do?
But I'm trying to see, it says username, so is that where we put our name?
No, you put here, first you put Laura Alipoon 975.
That's
Then
not-
when it,
It's not on Google, I'm on the app. So
Where
I
it's-
still do that?
yes, put that in, and then it may ask you for a screen name, hit skip, unless you want to see your name up here for the poll.
Okay.
So when you get to the app, it'll say pollev.com/ put Laura Alipoon, both A's, 975, and you should be good to go.
So we should have a screen like this now?
Yes, you should have a screen that shows you some questions. Okay, let's go to our first poll. Are you a member of the SDA church? Yes, no, raised in the church, never baptized, no longer on the books. And in a moment, I will unhide this so we can see our answers. We're just starting out with some basics of knowing who's who in the room. And I was supposed to have my phone out and vote. Shame on me. Because of course what I think is important, right?
Absolutely. Give yourself 10 votes.
And I just got done telling you guys I didn't do these things well under pressure, but I'm already here, and so I can just click on me. Okay. Okay, I have voted, so I assume the rest of you have had time.
Right.
Okay. So this is how it works. We can see right away what the people have said who are in the room currently. And I usually go ahead and hide it first. So whoever you sit by is going to tell you what we're doing for Pull Everywhere. Alan will cut this part out if you guys want me to wait while you get your phones geared up. If not, you can join the other end of the questions. Here's our next question.
How does one, oh, I see, you changed it. Okay,
I
thank you.
change it, and then your
Thank you.
phone, because you're here with me, will change it.
Mhm.
Have you ever considered leaving the SDA church? Yes, seriously considered. Briefly and seriously considered. Briefly, but not so seriously. No, I'm no longer in the church. Now, for those of you who are trying to get your Pull Everywhere set up, across the top it says you can text to the number 37607, and the content of the text is Laura Alipoon 975, both A's, and then you would text me. Once that's done, you'll be joined, and then you would text the answer.
But if they do it that way, they don't get to,
They won't see the questions if they do it that way. But at this point, if they don't have the app, that might be the quickest way to join.
yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah, they would not see the questions if they do it that way. All right, let's see where we're at here. Anybody surprised by this? Okay, we've got a couple people surprised. 54% of those in the room, no, never considered leaving the Adventist church. That's cool. Did I vote?
Now we're gonna find it.
You still can vote.
I can still vote.
She's over there.
Yeah, it'll change all.
There you go.
Oh.
Briefly but seriously considered. It's kind of like during finals week, you briefly consider stepping off the curb. I did this to let the car hit me because I just was overwhelmed at La Sierra. And then I thought, my luck, the car will hit me and not bad enough and I'll still have to take finals. And I stayed on the sidewalk. Briefly, and not seriously. And then briefly, seriously, and then yes. So, that gives people an idea of who we are in the room. All right. This, I think, is the last one of the first group. We do have another set for those of you who haven't been able to join us yet. The SDA church is in danger of becoming irrelevant. Now, my answer that I didn't put here was, what topic? What arena? So, do you strongly agree? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Strongly disagree? Too late. Already irrelevant. So those are your choices. Now, I'm not saying it is irrelevant. The question is in danger of becoming. Okay, let's see. I see a few people still playing with their phones, and if you're looking at Amazon, I apologize. I'm kidding. I do buy books from, when you guys mention books, I sometimes go on Amazon and buy them. Okay. All right, so this is a shift. We're a group of people who are solidly in the church, but we strongly agree that the church is in danger of becoming irrelevant. There's 21% who disagree, but not strongly. I am so glad that nobody chose E. I don't think it's too late, so I would agree with you there. All right, let's see where we are now. Some of his reference points for writing the book are people who are well informed about the church's organization. They know the top people, the head people. And I got to tell you, when you know what's going on in an organization, an institution, a corporation, usually you're more dissatisfied because you know what's going on. I went as a student missionary, happy, worked in a church school and became very dissatisfied and started paying my tithe wherever I felt like paying it, but not to the church. And I paid the tithe to the church again. But I was so upset and disgruntled with the nonsense that I said, y'all aren't getting my money anymore. Yeah, what did I make? Nothing. But anyway. So when you get up there and know what's going on, that does kind of breed dissatisfaction, I think. Committed Adventist Christians are not sure their church is where it belongs because it's becoming more conservative and more fundamentalist. A strict belief in the literal interpretation of religious texts. Yes, I looked it up, and that's, I forget where I found that. It might have been the dreaded source, Wikipedia. But issues that are causing angst and reflection. Role of women in the church. Attitude toward LGBTQ. Here's my questions. Is that loving? Is it forgiving? Is it accepting? Is it Christ-like? And people are beginning to feel that they have a moral responsibility and that their church isn't meeting the high moral standard when it comes to some of these things. Again, I want to emphasize, the author is not out of the Adventist church, nor is he going anywhere. He wants to remain part of the church, but he feels the church is in crisis. Now, I've not finished reading the book, so I don't know if I'm going to agree with him in every chapter, in every paragraph, or every sentence. And he talks a little bit about what is happening in the big picture to Christianity as a whole. Now, I'm not a historian. I'm only sharing parts of what he shared, and what he shared was very brief. Is the Christian church in decline? Yes and no. The Roman Catholic Archbishop in the Netherlands predicts 1,000 churches will close in the next 10 to 15 years. And that was stated 4 years ago. That's 2/3 of the churches in that archdiocese. In New York, a cardinal has stated nearly 1/3 of the 368 parishes will be closing. This is page 11 in the book. That's scary. My first question is, well, where are those people going to go to church? And my second question is, my comment to myself is, duh, they're closing because no one's going, Laura. I had not heard this phrase before, the global south and the global north. Instead of third world country, that went to developing countries, and now it's considered global south. What are some of those countries? Africa, Latin America, parts of Asia, China is still being considered in the global south. Well, what does that mean? The global north are us. We have plenty to eat. We spend a lot of money trying to learn how to not eat so much, right? And we have shelter. Yes, we have homeless. Yes, we have people who don't have enough to eat in this country. But it's not the norm at all. Now, these terms can be applied to the culture, it can be applied to religion, politics, and by needs, I mean, do I have enough to eat? Do I have shelter? Do I have clothes? Do I have access to medical care, etc.? Even in this country, there are people who do not have access to medical care. I am aware of a young man who just had surgery in Oklahoma, and he has no health insurance because he makes too much money, $9 an hour. He can't get aid. So he couldn't buy insulin for his diabetes, and he just lost a toe on one of his feet. I'd rather they give him insurance than the hospital's having to eat that or somehow get him aid. And so we said to this young man whom I know, work less. Well, then I can't meet rent and eat too. But I make too much money. Like, oh my. And I won't go on aid. I won't stop working to go on aid. And I'm like, go on aid, die. That, you know, even in this country, we have issues. Some Christian movements are doing well. Now the South, global South, has much more growth than the global North. The Pentecostal religion is doing quite well. Postmodern people are attracted to that. It's based on spirituality and religious experience. They will know we are Christians by our doctrine. I don't think the song goes that way. By our love, membership, and attendance. Mainline Protestant churches in the U.S. retain only 37% of their young people. It's not a good grade. Christians ages 18 to 23, only 1.5% have a biblical worldview. I never realized how much I use Christian words and statements until I was in Saudi Arabia and I started to say something. They went 2 by 2 and I went, well, okay, Islam believes in Noah. I think I'm okay with that statement. And then I started to say another statement and I'm like, oh dear, that's from the Bible too. Yeah, it's interesting. I say things sometimes and people look at me funny or they smile because they understand the reference. The SDA retention rate is pretty abysmal as well. 43 out of 100 leave the Adventist church within a few years. Between 2000 and 1200, we cleaned our records and dropped approximately 6 million people. Now I know I was part of this at the church we were at the time. My husband was head elder. And so we had decisions. Well, if we've never seen or heard from them in 1 year, do we drop them? Well, no, because maybe they've moved, maybe they've been in the hospital, okay. 3 years? 5 years? 10 years? Well, yeah, 10 years, we better cut them. Okay, how about 5 years? I mean, it was quite the difficult process. Well, wait a minute, I know this person and they're still in the church. Maybe they just never moved their membership. We don't want to excommunicate them and no, they don't drop, they're dropping from these books, but they'll be somewhere at the GC, and it was like nobody seemed to know exactly how to handle it. But if they aren't attending, we need to make sure that what we have on our books in our local church is as accurate as we can get it. Between 1965 and 2014, 33 million people were baptized, and 13 million left the church. Now, it doesn't say the 13 are from the 33 or if that's just another group. This doesn't count those who were never baptized, who grew up in the church and had enough integrity to say, but I don't believe that one of the 27 or 28 or 25, depending on what year it was, or 22 at one point. And so they wouldn't get baptized. Reasons. Why is this happening? All of this is a quote taken pieces here and there. That's the ... in between, but all of these are his words. Increasingly uneasy about things that happened in their local church. I was speaking at Sabbath school one time, and this woman whom I liked was giving me the dirtiest look, and I thought, what? What am I doing? What am I saying? And I asked someone later, and they said, you put down the King James Version. I said, no, I didn't. I quoted out of, and I gave my references, how in this passage, the King James didn't do as good of a job as in these passages. I was talking about how after the resurrection, Mary goes to him and he says, "Don't touch me, I have to go." Well, that isn't what it says at all, because it's basically saying, "Let go of me. Quit glomming on me, I need to go now." Well, that changed my worldview. This was so important to me as a woman, rather than "You are unclean, don't touch me, I haven't ascended." Excuse me? I heard a sermon on that once. I'm unclean? I guess that's why we have problems in our church with the roles I can hold. I'm unclean. But the other references were saying, no, it means she's already touching him, let go. Well, that makes sense to me. Women, wouldn't you run and throw your arms around the man? I thought you were dead. And he's like, I'm fine, thank you. Now let go, I need to go. And she was giving me dirty looks. Anyway, local church, sorry, little following a squirrel there. So they're getting frustrated, weary, I like this word, weary of some of the trends and decisions, or both. They wonder more and more about the biblical basis for particular church doctrines. If you look up SDA beliefs, you will come to the page that is our churches, and the first thing you see on the cover page is the Bible and the Bible only. Philosophy, not necessarily practice. Feel increasingly hedged in by lifestyle demands of the church, have gradually begun to read the Bible in a way that differs from what is officially fostered as the correct approach, or even doubt the very foundational elements of the Christian faith. You may agree with some of these, you may disagree with some of them. Total world population in 1900, 33% Christians. It's the same now, no change. Christianity has lost significant strength in the Western world, in the global North. Even though the North has had an increase in population, the percentage of Christians has remained stable. Experts estimate that in 2025, Catholic membership will be at the same level in North America and Europe. In Africa, it'll move from 120 million to 228 million. Latin America, from 461 million to 606 million. In Asia, from 110 mil to 160 mil. In October, I had the privilege of going to a conference in London. And my colleague is from England, and so we met her sister and some others in a pub where they were having quiz night, which was really quite fun. What was interesting to me is that they knew I was a Christian, and my colleague had told them all, be on your best behavior. She doesn't smoke, she doesn't drink, and if you hear a swear word out of her, something's really wrong, she's a Christian, so just behave. So they wanted to know, one of the questions was, how many people were on Noah's Ark? I thought, oh my. Everyone at the table looked at me to give the answer. I thought, oh my, you don't know this? And then the quiz guy says, well, you know, hint. And I'm like, a hint? This is cradle roll. So I found that very bizarre. Yes, I gave the answer, but with the hint, others got it as well. The table was very upset. 2. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Okay, let's look at Seventh-day Adventist. 1980. Membership has doubled since then. In Europe, it's increased by 30%. Much of this is due to immigration from Global South. Inter-America grew from 646,000 to more than 3.5 million. South America, 215 membership, 5 times higher. Africa, 10 times what it was in 1980. All right, let's talk a little bit about pre-modern, modern, and postmodern. This is a table on your handout as well, and the source is on there. So, in pre-modern, how do I know? It's faith and mysticism. When we had Brian Bowl and Fritz Guy here, we did talk a bit about the contrast between modern and pre-modern. In modern, it's experience and reason. Postmodern, social subjectivism. So who am I? What am I? I am subject to God's will. Autonomy, it's nature versus nurture. Now, it's social determinism and reductionism. Well, how should I live? Ethics. Collectivism and altruism was the pre-modern. Modern, individualism. Have you ever read Atlas Shrugged? Atlas gets tired of the world on his shoulders, so one day he shrugs and off it rolls. Individualism. Postmodern, collectivism and egalitarianism. How should I live? With politics and economics. Pre-modern, feudalism. Modern, liberal capitalism. Postmodern, socialism. I've put up a couple of definitions here because I can't tell you how many times I've had to have my phone out when people are talking, going to dictionary.com. I've heard that word before, but I can't remember what it means. And I know one time a woman in front of me said, well, what does that mean? So I handed her my phone. I said I just had to look it up. So I thought I'd give you a couple of definitions for those of you who are like me. Human behaviors determined by social interactions alone. That's a little scary. What if the person you're socially interacting with is an idiot? That's a problem. Reductionism. Well, that can be explained by physics or the chemicals in the body. You love your child because your oxytocin levels increase. Right? By the way, my daughter is giving birth to my first grandchild in October. I am so excited. Don't tell her I told you. I just can't wait.
Speaking of oxytocin.
Speaking of oxytocin. Okay, postmodern people. Who are we and how do we behave? Church has lost credibility, and by church I mean the Christian church, not just Adventism. Christians don't walk in the steps of the Master. Oppression by clergy. Internal controversies in denominations. Bitter theological debates. Christian hatred and bigotry. Endless fragmentation of the church. Church leaders sending Jews to Auschwitz. White Christians using the Bible to defend slavery, racism, and apartheid. Atrocities in Northern Ireland, genocide in Rwanda, sexual escapades and abuse by preachers and the clergy. Happens in the Adventist church too. Foundations of science might not be certain. No longer believe that science will necessarily make life better. It may make it worse in some cases. There are no absolutes. Well, that's your belief. Has nothing to do with me. Everything is subjective, relative, uncertain, and ambiguous. So if there are no absolutes, what do we base our Christian beliefs on? What is the truth? And I mean, I get that. Look at the elephant and the blind men of Hindustan and the arguments they had. You know, the poem that the elephant, oh, he's like a wall because that blind man found the side. No, he's like a rope because they found the tail. No, he's like a fan because they found the ear. They were all wrong and they were all right. There is truth. So they no longer have this meta-narrative for a framework of behavior. There's blurred lines between real life, fiction, and virtual. There are people who have richer virtual lives in games than they have in real life. The global village is very important. They will pay more for coffee because it was done fair trade. Others will just go buy a coffee maker and deal with it at home and spend 5 years paying it off versus what they would have gotten at Starbucks. Local issues are very important. They want to buy locally. They want to go and buy directly from the farmers. Food tastes better, why not? Spirituality is the emphasis. Religiosity is just that, and it is said as a negative. Well, that's religiosity. I am a spiritual person, and I'm not putting that down. In the Western world, Christianity has become one option, and one option alone. All world religions are equally valid, and I can do buffet, pick and choose. Well, I like this from Confucius, and Buddha says, and Jesus says, and Muhammad said. In the New Testament, we had a young, vibrant church. It spread rapidly throughout the Middle East, Asia, Africa, within decades. Early 2nd and 3rd century church fathers gave structure. 4th century, Constantine decided to give Christianity a privileged status. This allowed the church to expand further without persecution, but it also tied the church to politics and all the negative consequences of that. Medieval era, we have the growth of the papacy. A bunch of illiterate people who were told what they should believe. So, we have a mix of faith and pagan superstition. Heathens, quote unquote, were converted. Actually, I think the quote should be around the word converted. And they brought in their own beliefs and practices. Theologians were often unduly influenced by the writings of, non-Christian philosophers. Church leaders were more concerned about acquiring power than they were about being a disciple of Christ. Papacy was the center of authority. Oh, there's the duplicative slide. I apologize. Same slide, this one's got a photo. I shot that photo, by the way. If you've never been to Florence, I highly recommend it. I knew it was in there and didn't get it out. So, if you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it. Whose history, I ask? The victors? Dominant gender? The dominant culture? I mean, history is good to know, but are you really getting the truth? I mean, if I win the election, my history is going to be different than the person who lost it, right? Here's some of the fault lines, and we'll be talking more about that next week. The South and the North, there's a widening chasm. The focus. Inspiration and security comes from the past. Reading of the Bible has become very, very, it's a fault line. Plain and literal reading versus reading with historical cultural context. Definition of plain or literal. Adherence to the exact letter, the literal sense in accordance with the meaning of the word. In the language you're reading it in, of course, in the version that you're reading it in, of course. As opposed to historical critical thinking, asking, what did it mean to the people at that time? Once I know what it meant to them, I can know what it means to me. All right, wake up. We've got a couple more polls to do. Wake your phone up. And we are going to, okay, it should be there for you. I believe in the plain or literal reading of the Bible as defined on the previous slide. Yes, somewhat, not totally, I am not sure, no. Those are your choices.
Does everybody have the question? I don't.
You don't have the question?
Just refresh.
There it is. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'll wait just a moment. I see some of you are still waking your phones up and trying to decide what you believe. Okay, we have some say yes, some say somewhat but not totally, some say no. We've got people still voting and changing their mind, okay? Sometimes you misread the question, or sometimes you're like, oh no, nobody else does, so I better not either. I'm not sure. Okay. And then the percentages change, of course, as others vote. Okay. All right, so I just find this interesting to know what the range of beliefs. Every single person here from what we asked earlier, is a Seventh-day Adventist member. Right? And we have diverse beliefs. I don't have a problem with that. All right, let's go to the next one. The main division, says Bruinsma, is between people who are comfortable with the church and people who are not comfortable with the church. The people who are comfortable don't want any change, or they want it to become more and more fundamental, which is not how the Adventist church started, which I always find interesting. They want to strengthen traditional identity. They support the leadership. They wish to protect the past. Beliefs are defined in detail. I want to know what I am to believe. And there's an us versus them, remnant versus enemy. Those who are uncomfortable with the church trends want change. They want to bring it up to date so it remains relevant, relates to the present society and culture. They want the beliefs to make a difference in how they believe. Oneness of the flock is in the fact that we have one shepherd, not in the fact that all sheep are clones. All right, what I would like you to do on this one, when you think of the Adventist church, what are some of the words you think of? I'm not looking for anything bad. It can be something that maybe you're worried, but please don't use bad words. Not that any of you would, judging from the poll we've just had. So feel free to enter a word. You can either enter several. If you want two words to be together, have no spaces. So you want to say wonderful hallelujah, no spaces, it'll be as one word. Okay, if you put a space, it'll come up as several. So you type a word, hit submit, and it will come up. Okay, I just found out I can only respond 3 times. So I have to stop. I wish they would have warned me.
So you could put 3 words down?
3 words. And actually, if you put 3 words with a space in between on one, I think that's only 1 submission. I just love these word clouds. This is cool. Okay, I am happy to, I've taken up a lot of time, but I've also engaged you in a lot of the polling, so I won't make an apology for that. Do you have questions or comments? Now, if you have, I've represented Bruinsma's words and thoughts in 99%, and 1% was me, maybe 2% if you count tone. So I'll do my best to field your questions or comments. Next week we'll be looking at a little bit more of the trends in Adventism, and I will also be using a little book that was the reporting on the Unity Conference in 2017 to look at some of those things that were mentioned. Interesting how conservative got right in the
Yeah, I
middle
was
there.
wondering, does that mean it was most often,
It was chosen a lot, so it's larger.
so it's larger?
Yeah, and in the middle. Now you'll see that Sabbath is mentioned here, Sabbath, Sabbath school, Sabbath blessing, because those were different, they are listed separately. Okay.
I'm a little confused when you were describing the postmodern people and how that related to the growth of the church from the global south. So clearly, we're not describing, I mean, no, I shouldn't say clearly, but the postmodern people are not the people from the global south. Am I correct in that?
I would say that the global north has been hit more by the postmodern concerns and environment.
So then if it's, but that, yet that's where it's growing, so so he's just, I mean, was he drawing a line between the global south growing, the global north going away because they're moving more towards a postmodern state of mind?
Yes,
So then the global south hasn't quite done that. Is that
correct. They're
Okay.
more in the modern is more the industrial revolution and that kind of a thing. And the north, and he didn't make this point, but someone who knows about this, correct me if I'm wrong, because we're in the postmodern and we have most of our needs, we tend to be more in that mindset. It's like our faith hasn't sustained us, our belief in science hasn't sustained us, and so there's no truth, there's no beliefs.
So one last thing, how then do you reconcile the growth of the Pentecostal faith, because that's the religious experience? Is that the type of growth that we're seeing from the global south, or is that the growth we're seeing only in the global north? Because that kind of relates with the postmodern, which
Sure.
is more based on religious experience.
My reading of what he said is what you just ended with, which is the postmodern people are more into experience and into spirituality, not I have to put my right shoe on first every day, and I'm being silly to make the point. So they're not as much into religiosity or strict rules or mandates and don't tell me what to do. Is that? He's looking at me and not nodding, so maybe I've got
I
it
think to be
wrong.
nodding. I think it's an interesting question she's raised, because as I think about it, in the global north, those religious communities that are thriving tend to be charismatic. I think that's true in this country. I notice it in Australia as well. Not merely the Adventist church, but my wife has family in Australia that go to other churches, and they tend to be very charismatic. So I think in the global north, charismatic churches are growing. I think in the global south, many people are pre-modern. Not only just modern, but pre-modern. And they, as Dr. Keto was saying earlier, some of them are frankly polytheistic. They believe in the Christian God, but they also believe in other deities. So I think it's a very, very difficult situation we're facing. The only thing I would add is that all the denominations are facing this. This is not at all distinctive to us, but all of them are. The Catholics were smart though, right? They chose a liberal pope from the global south. That way they appeal to both constituencies.
Right.
That's a very, very adroit move on their part, I think.
I've noticed with my students that they're all about community. They're all about service. They want to go on mission trips. They want to help. They want to be part of community. So this charismatic experience, community, feeds into that need. I know when my husband and I came to this church, we were sitting in the Sabbath school that just was there after early church. We didn't know anybody. We didn't know where to go. We started looking around and we walked into one Sabbath school. Not one person said hello. Not one person asked our names. Finally, on our second week there, we thought, well, maybe that was an off week. Someone whom I know from the university said, oh, hi. And so we said, okay, we're not coming back here. And then Dean Pearson invited us to this Sabbath school. And I remember Forrest and his lovely wife Barbara saying, well, how are you guys? We've not seen you here before. What's your name? Where are you from? And we thought, okay, we have found community. And we've been here ever since. Yes.
I would just say, as a therapist, what I observe is with the decline of the family, you have to belong. And so I think that's why, if it's a comfortable place you've grown up with as a child, it's going to be the one place you'll stay. But I think that partly explains that.
Okay, thank you. Next week, we'll be doing chapter 3 for those of you who have an interest in the book, and we will be using Pull Everywhere again.
Oh, thank you so much, Laura. This has been wonderful. I'm so sorry. I didn't think to bring my phone today and got to get a hold of the book, but your presentation has been such a blessing. Since I didn't have my phone, let me just add the word hope in the second coming. When I think of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, it's interesting that no one put anything up about the second part of our name, Adventist. I would have put that word up. That's really important, I think, to us as a people. I also appreciate what you were had experienced once, I think maybe being on a church board where they were going through names of people who hadn't been attending. And it's what came to my mind is how sad that our church often has spent their energy on what should we do, when should we take this person off our books, instead of spending that energy on calling those people and reaching out to them and inviting them. There is a wonderful person by the name of Steve Case who has had a wonderful ministry to young people through the years. You probably are familiar with him. But he has a new ministry, rather over the last 5 or 6 years, to backslidden Adventists. And he happened to go to my brother's church in Boise. The church there, I can't think of their name, I always forget it, but they have adopted, my brother kind of heads up this wonderful ministry to folk who have not been attending. They invite them to come for, there's a place to have, coffee, tea, whatever drinks, to socialize before, after church. They go out to eat together, so they are developing community, or have developed a wonderful community in this church. And there are people that are coming that weren't coming as a result, so it's really exciting to see that.
Well, in defense of that little church, there was some of that, because people would say, oh, she's been in the hospital, or her kids, she's had a rough year, or whatever, let's reach out. There was part of that. But there were also people, they moved back east. Maybe they just forgot to move their membership, or maybe they did and we didn't take them off. And so there was a lot of that going on.
I apologize for being late, but thank you for an outstanding presentation here. I'm looking at the God dimension, and I've just noticed the words God and Jesus don't appear up on the list at all. And so within this framework of pre-modern, modern, postmodern, I'm kind of wondering where most Adventists are in that framework. Pentecostalists are growing because they uphold a very personal, close relationship with Christ, and God is a very warm, cuddly, or loving kind of God, which is not consistent with necessarily history. But on the other hand, I'm kind of wondering where Adventists are maybe on their image of God and their picture of God, and how you might fit it into this framework, knowing that the Pope earlier this year put out a letter warning his members not to be overly dependent on a personal relationship with God. That's not the direction of the Catholic Church. So can you think the way through that?
My first thought was that sometimes the obvious isn't what we put up. So maybe nobody put God or Jesus because we were thinking of the Adventist church and kind of didn't think about the things that all Christians have in common. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that was my first thought. I can't speak for the church, I can't speak for all the people in the church, but I think that sometimes we get so caught up in who's right and who's wrong and being exclusive, that we are exclusionary instead of being inclusive. And I think that maybe that is indicative of not having as close of a walk as we should. I really didn't touch your question, and I'm sorry, but that's like a whole book. And then Donna.
I mean, thank you for attempting that, but just to kind of push a little further, the mantra of a lot of New Age Christians is Christ-focused, spirit-led, community-oriented, values-driven, principles-guided, family-based. I mean, that's how I kind of see the summary. And I just think it's interesting that those kind of current modern-day Christian themes are not represented in our response. But maybe in some of the next sessions that might be addressed. But it doesn't seem that we are, not that we necessarily should be, but we're not anywhere in that kind of mainstream of current Christian presentation and thought.
Mm-hmm. And all of those themes are very important. I'd actually like to hear from Donna.
Yes, Donna.
Oh, I was just,
Oh.
I can project, I think.
She shook me off, so I
I
left.
know,
Oh,
she
well,
does it
I
all
knew
the
the
time,
time
that's why
was
I'm calling her
at the
out,
end.
I want to hear from her.
I just wanted to respond to a couple of things. I think part of the reason the word Advent doesn't appear is because an emphasis on true second coming is kind of going the way of the sanctuary doctrine. We don't emphasize it. It is otherworldly in a way that doesn't appeal, and certainly not often to the young people who are voting with their feet. Perhaps the same thing applies a little bit to personal relationship with Jesus. It's not, people could understand a personal relationship with the people around them. They can understand bringing sandwiches to poor people. They can understand a lot of the social immediacy and sort of the fruits of a Christian philosophy. But whether they really concentrate or believe, and I don't know if that's a reflection of the way our group feels, but particularly with regard to the lack of the appearance of the word Advent or second coming on that chart.
And I think also the words that people chose to put on the word cloud came from the presentation we just had. And so that's where the focus of thinking was, and that could explain that as well, but thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, well, again, I would like to say that this is going to continue. That we're just waiting our efforts. All right, I think it was very helpful.
He asked that because when he presents, he's thinking he needs to learn how to use it.
But anyway, and by the way, pastoring, I did learn one of the reasons that names came off books. Ingathering. And they say, Elder Hal, we need to clear the books. The Lord will bless. I said, does that have anything to do with ingathering? Oh, well, yes. So, because what was it, $25 a member? Was that what we had? Anyway, we had all these bands and everything. Okay. So we're going to continue this for the next several weeks? And you're here next week?
I'm
and
here
then-
next week.
And then we've got...
Chapter 3.
All right, let's do our benediction. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
That's right.